So I've got this Converse logo here, and you can see that it's not just regular text, it's got a curve to it. So we have it curved here and here. So how do we do that in Photoshop? There's a couple of different ways you can do it. Let's go ahead and go to our shape tools, which is quick key U, and we've got our rectangle, ellipse, etc. Let's go ahead with the ellipse since it's going to be a circle, and we want a perfect circle. So as you start dragging, I want you to hold down your shift key. That'll give you a perfect circle. And then remember, before you release the mouse, if you want to place it in a certain location while you're holding the shift key, add the space bar and then you can position it. Wherever you want to put it is fine. Okay, so what I've drawn here, and your settings could be a little bit different. I've drew it in the shape mode. My fill is no fill, and I've got a stroke of 1 black pixel. I'm actually going to increase this just for demonstration purposes here. All right, so again, I have an ellipse, and what we haven't really talked about are these little squares here, and these are called anchor points, and these anchor points can be manipulated. I'm not going to do that right now, but just getting you familiar with some terminology here. All right, so I'm going to actually collapse my properties panel here, and I'm going to grab my type tool, so quick key T. And who knows what settings you have, so we know that we can reset the tool here. That's what I'm going to recommend that you do. And it will take you back to 12 point left align black for your color. Now, when we take our type tool near the ellipse, okay, so if I'm away from my ellipse, look at my cursor. It looks like an I-beam, right? If I get my cursor closer to my circle, you'll see a little bit of a difference in the change of your cursor. So it has a little bit of a curved line at the very bottom. That's indicating that the text is going to actually snap onto your shape, okay? Now, if we want it to be centered in the circle, I'm going to have you switch your alignment on your options bar to center text, and we're going to actually get right on that top little reference anchor point. Okay, so you're going to click your mouse and you're going to get a blinking cursor. Well, it's very tiny because we're at a 12-point font. Before I actually type, I'm just going to increase the font size a little bit so we'll be able to see our text. I'm going to turn on my caps lock and I'm going to type the word Converse. Okay, and obviously we're not matching the font. You guys know how to do that. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time doing that. But the problem is, once we commit that, right, so we know we can either hit Control Enter to lock it in, or we can hit the check mark. The problem is that the ellipse is showing. So if I hide the ellipse, we get what's called a path, okay? Now, some people say, well, can't you just go to your ellipse and turn the stroke off? You could, okay? I'm showing you a couple of different ways that you could do this. So when we hide that layer, we still have our curved text. But if I go into my ellipse and I Control T and I shrink it, okay, I'm not going to control my text because I used the ellipse as a reference only. Okay, so even if I hide it, it still goes away, but I can't control the shape of my text. All right, so I'm going to actually do an F12. If F12 doesn't work for you, just close the file and reopen it or back it up with Control-Alt-Z. So let's go back to our ellipse tool again. And this time, some people say, well, what if I turn the stroke off? You could, but when you do curved text, we want it on what's called a path. And in your options bar, for any shape tool, we have different options. We have it in the shape mode. Now, when you're in the shape mode, you get the ability, right, to draw a shape and it fills it with color, etc. But when we undo that and we go to the path mode, you won't see fill or stroke because it's a path. So you think about a path as a way to get from point A to point B. But when we're in ellipse path, when you drag it out, it works kind of the same way. So you drag it out. If you want a perfect circle, hold down your shift key. If you want to position it while you're holding your shift key, hold down your space bar and you can put it there. So we still end up with these 4 anchor points, our reference points. Now, when we go, look here, see how it didn't make on your layers panel, it didn't make an ellipse layer? It's a path. So we actually have a paths panel. If you don't see your paths panel, you can see it says work path. If it's not showing, you can go to Window, okay, and you can turn on the path. And you don't have to necessarily be on the path panel for this to work. So I'm actually going to go back to my layers panel here. So the path is just a reference line. And now I'm going to take my type tool again. My settings are fine. I'm going to put my cursor again near the ellipse. Now, if I go to the bottom, it works kind of the same way. You can put it wherever you want, but if you want the word to, split at the top, you would do a center alignment. So half the letters go to the left and half go to the right. So if you just willy-nilly click over here and you start to type the word Converse, and oops, I'm having my caps lock, it's going to start at that point. If you left align it, it would left align based on where you click your mouse. So my recommendation, okay, would be if you know you want it centered, center it before you type it and click it at the top of your circle. See what happened when I went to left align? It threw it to the bottom, which is kind of a pain. Now, so again, if I Control Enter, it locks it in. So we only have a text layer here. So if I do a Control T and I resize, notice it's not resizing the text, it's resizing the path. So what happens if I reduce the size? I'm going to hold down Alt and Shift so it resizes based off of the center point, and that's what the Alt does, and the Shift will keep it in proportion. Okay, so when I do this, still resize my circle, but it also, because my text was attached to a path and not a shape, it moved the text. Okay, so when you want to do text on a path, you should be in the path mode. And then you can do whatever formatting you want to the text. So if you decide, hey, I don't like that color, right? We know we can go in there and we can change that. We can change the font, everything that you can do to a piece of text. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control Enter. I'm just going to hide that layer here for a second. So here's the deal. When you have text on a path, this is where people get a little bit like, wait a minute, why is this thing still here? It's going to be there because you've created this path on here. Okay, so don't freak out. If you switch to a path associated layer, it disappears. But if I go back to my Converse layer, turn it on, I don't see the path. If I need to see my path, I have to go in here to the paths panel and select it. Now I have two paths because I did two different ones. So I'm going to, let's F12 and clean all this mess up. Okay, so again, we should be in the path mode. Now, it doesn't always have to be circular, right? So we could, whatever you want, let's experiment here a little bit. Let's pick some other shape. Okay, so I just went into custom shape, pick whatever you want, I really don't care. But draw it in the path mode, right? And wherever we take our type tool and we attach to the path, okay, I'm going to make my text a little bit smaller. And there I have my text on path, okay? So that is with any shape that is available to you in Photoshop. So it can be custom shape, any of those here. All right, let's F12 that again, clean that mess up. Let's go back to our ellipse tool and it should be in a path mode. I'm going to drag out a circle, kind of the same thing. Doesn't really matter how big it is. All right, and now let's kind of follow what we did before. So I'm going to go to my type tool. I want centering on. I'm going to go to the top of my circle here, and I'm going to type the word Converse in all caps. It's too small, right, because I changed my font size, and then I can just kind of eyeball it. Now, if I want to do the all-star, that gets a little bit more complicated. All right, so I'm gonna actually go to my layers panel here. I'm gonna hide that layer here for a second. All right, so what I like to do when I'm trying to get this text underneath it. I can't just go down here. All right, let's go back to the paths, make sure I'm on the path. So if I take my type tool and I go to the bottom of the path, it's not really letting me do it because this is the text. So how can you fake it? What I like to do is I can just go to my converse layer. I'm going to Control J to duplicate it. Okay. If I take my move tool, I have two converse. Okay. Just so you know, you don't need to do that, but I undid it. But I want you to realize when you Control J, it's on top of the one that I just duplicated here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change the text of the copy layer to say All Star. And I know what you're thinking. Why is she doing that up here? Well, here's the deal. Let's hide the Converse original layer. Now I've got All Star. Well, how can I change this All Star to go to the bottom of the path? Because it needs to go down here. This is where it gets tricky. All right, so some new tools for you here. We're going to go to the quick key A. In quick key A, we have path selection and we have direct selection. So the path selection means this path moves and the text moves with it. Let's undo that because we don't want it to move. This guy, direct selection, the white arrow, got to really pay attention here to what I'm doing. I'm going to actually zoom in. When I get my cursor near the path, okay, right now it's a white arrow. Look at my cursor. When I get near the path, you'll see I have like an I-beam with these little black triangles going left and right. That lets you control the text. It's a little bit weird to get used to, okay? And if you're just using your touchpad, it's going to be a little more weird probably for you to do. But what we do is we want to pull this text inside the path. So you're going to just click and hold the mouse and pull in, okay? So it was out, I'm pulling in. And the text does flip upside down, don't worry about it. So we have our text inside here, but we need it to go down to the bottom of the circle. How do we do that? You just click and keep rotating, and you'll see the text kind of spin into place. See what I'm doing here? Spinning it around, takes a little bit of practice, and there we go. So now when I turn this on, we have this. But the problem is, All Star needs to be in the same circle. In other words, it kind of lines up. So what we have to either do, we either have to pull Converse in or push All Star out. Since I don't have much room here at the bottom of my circle, I'm going to go to my Converse layer. I'm going to select it. I'm going to go to my old friend, the character panel. And how can I move it in? This is a baseline, right? It's just a curved one. So if I go to my baseline shift and I start to pull it in, you can see you can snap it in. Now, if you want to get it exactly right, you can use your arrow keys. If you click your cursor in the baseline shift box, you can nudge it pixel by pixel, basically. And then, right, there's a lot of space between the letters. That's tracking. Now, obviously, if I want more of a serif font, I can go in here and find one. You know, I'm not going to find the exact one, but whatever. You kind of get the idea. Same thing down here, right? So if I go to All Star, double click here, we would pick the same font. I don't know what I just picked. I'm just going to pick one, okay? And then I would do basically the same things. I need to go into my character panel here. I need to increase my tracking of all spacing between the letters. That's probably too much, but this is just kind of learning here, okay? But what you can see here, oh, I can't live with that. That's too much tracking. Now, when I deselect the two text layers, I won't see the path anymore, okay? And that's how you do text on a path. Now, all this other stuff, you know, we're just concerned with the text, but there's some circles here with some different types of strokes, etc. But I wanted you to be able to get both pieces of text in there, curved and readable. We don't want the word All Star to be upside down. So that's sort of the basic intro to how we do text on a path in Photoshop.